Hello, it is Mark Major here at the Action Figuratorium. That's the name of this little studio that I'm in. And previously on this channel, I had made a video, which I like a lot, called Top 5 Inexpensive Alternatives to Mythic Legions 6-inch fantasy action figures. Kind of a mouthful, I know. Anyways, in that video, I found 5 separate toy lines which produced fantasy action figures that played nice with the Mythic Legions and Mythic Legions style of fantasy action figures, whether they're background characters or if this is some kind of army building, or maybe they're good enough to actually party with the Mythic Legions, whether that's Dungeons and Dragons party or maybe that's your spring break. Either way, that was a great video, but today's video is a bit of a follow-up to that. It's my top 5 alternatives to Mythic Legions horses. Now, you may notice that inexpensive is no longer in the title. That's because some of these horses I'm going to show you cost a bit of money, but there's some real deals and steals on the list, so we're going to get into it here on the Action Figuratorium. Alright, let's begin with what I think has kind of started what I'm claiming is going to be a run on horses for a bit. Kind of like the way with the HasLab Engine of Vengeance, there's a bit of a kind of run on 1/12 scale cars. So the Mythic Legions folks, the 4 Horsemen, they released this extremely cool toy for Halloween. It's the Headless Horseman. It's 120 bucks. It's the horse and the action figure with all of his different accoutrements that comes with it. And a lot of people, I'm sure, pick these up. These are always fantastic deals. They do nothing but go up in price, but they're always some of the most coolest toys out there available, especially if you're into action figures. And so, previous to this coming out, most people who collected the Mythic Legion stuff, although I don't have the numbers, I get the feeling that a lot of people kind of passed on the horses that they made. Now, the reason why they would pass on the horses is because the horses a lot of times were auxiliary characters to the evil boss villain in the wave. So the horse would be a flaming horse or undead or something like that, right? And other times people might pass on the horse because the character is really cool, right? And the horse is just an accessory to the character. And if the character costs this much, but the horse costs this much, I think a lot of people might just kind of pass on getting a horse most of the time and just sort of put their money, if they're not going all in, into sort of getting as many different characters as they can. But with the purchase of this, a lot of people now have a Mythic Legions 1/12 scale medieval horse in their collection, and this thing is pretty badass. I mean, I was looking at it and I saw like sort of the individual little brush strokes that make up the hairs on the horse, and I thought this is a pretty cool looking piece. These guys have kind of hit it out of the park with this one. So of course, people are now going to be trying to get more horses to go with their Mythic Legions characters and other 1/12 figures in general because of how sort of badass this comes out. So I wanted to go through 5 possible toy horses that you can kind of get easily out there, and then at that point we'll just kind of throw it up to the committee and see what you think. So the first one, now I know there's going to be a lot of crying at these first 2. I accept it. The first 2 on the list of 5 are horses that are posed and do not have articulation. I know that you're probably saying that don't count, they got to be articulated. This is for people doing action figure photography. This is for people who are like maybe posing with collections and stuff, things inside glass that people, you know, friends come over and they walk by, that sort of thing. Stuff on the mantle, stuff on their shelves. Maybe it's the background of their YouTube set. I don't know. But just, you know, you need to know, it's an information video. It's not like a fight or anything. This is to help you find cool horses for your photography that play nice with some of these other kind of cool action figures. So let's check them out. So the first one is by JXK Studio. Maybe it's Studios, it doesn't matter. It's one of these weird foreign companies that puts out really high-end, cool-looking, hard-to-get stuff. And they make a whole bunch of kind of ultra-realistic looking horses. They look like great here with samurai. I'm sure they'd look great with cowboys and Indians. I'm sure they would look great with medieval knights and that kind of, you know, sort of fantasy figure on them. So don't, you know, sort of like poo-poo these. Check them out. However, they're kind of expensive. They're like $80 on up, and the chance of finding a used one or something, I don't know, maybe. I'm just saying that they're out there, and you never know what you might come across. So let's move on to number 4. Some of you may not know this, but there have been companies making toy horses for what is a really, really, really long time, and there's a lot of them out there. And just as there's a lot of people out there who collect action figures, there's a lot of people out there who collect dolls, Cabbage Patch Kids, Hot Wheels, Monster High dolls. There's just sort of larger groups of collectors than you expect, and there's a very large group of collectors who collect toy horses. And this brand, Breyer, is just one of these brands that scales to, they make sort of inexpensive, cheap stuff, but they also make high-end collectible stuff. And people will kind of hunt down the more collectible stuff. However, they're in it to make toy horses, and this line, which is called the Freedom Series, gives you a bunch of pretty good looking horses for not a lot of money. So this was like, let's say someone paid you, they want to take a picture of an action figure and they want it with a toy horse, and you didn't know what to do, and you're like, oh my god, the deadline's coming up. You can just buy one of these off Amazon, you'd have it, and you'd have something to work with, you know. It wouldn't be great, because of course there's always something better, but it's going to cross the finish line. All right, let's move on to number 3. Now, number 3, some people might want to say should be number 1, and I don't want to be involved in that fight. You guys take that fight to the comment section, or to Reddit, or to Facebook groups. I don't care. I'm not going to get involved in the fight, but here we go. Number 3. Check this out, guys. This is the McFarlane Toys. These guys always are coming out crushing us. It's the Witcher horse, and it's called Roach, which, you know, for those of you out there in the sort of weed smoking community, that's not a terrible name, right? Here comes the horse Roach. Comes with I forgot I have a mouse. Comes with sword. How about that for fantasy steeds with a sword? That's pretty wild. Anyways, this guy looks pretty good, and GameStop has them for $39, and I was looking at an Amazon page and I saw it for $31. So I know that there's some way to get a couple of these for 30 bucks each at like some clearance place where they bought 6, they sold through 4, there's 2 sitting there. And I bet you could go as is, or you could do a little kit bash, a little bit of modding, a little bit of customizing, a little bit of dashes of paint here and there and make it unique looking. You can make this thing pop, and it's not that bad of a price. It's about the same price as the last guys, but I believe this has some articulation. I get the feeling it's cheap articulation. It moves a little bit and it gets scared and it falls down. So, you know, don't like ride the articulation wave, you know, into the sunset. This thing is good enough to put a dude on, that's it. And that's why it's at number 3, but, you know, I think if you're looking for this kind of thing. So, number 2, okay, here we go, number 2. And some of you have probably been screaming this from the very beginning to just go to this, but it is from Good Smile Company. It's their Max Factory Figma horse. Now, there is, let's look at this thing. This looks pretty good. I don't know if you guys can see this on your you're looking on your phones or if you're on a monitor, but this looks really good. Looks great with figures. Look at that. Look at when you put a naked man on this, the naked man and horse together. Like, where are they? What are they? There's something going on in this photo here. I don't know. I think you guys revisit later. Look at this. This is cool. Sort of looks like two Russian statues fighting. I don't know what's happening in these photos here, but good on the Good Smile Company. You guys are hitting it out of the park. And look, here's some other horses you can get. There's a couple different. There's a version 1, version 2 of white, version 1, version 2 of chestnut, and then they've got a couple of version 2. And I assume version 1 and version 2 just means there's a slight difference in either body style or the way they articulate, or, you know, minor changes, mechanical changes to it. Otherwise, why would you call it version 2? I mean, it looks like it's the same paint. But then there's these other three. There's a brown, a black, and sort of a light brown, dark brown, and then kind of a black. And so that's pretty good. And these guys I have seen out and about at some websites, and I want to say they clock in somewhere between 60 and 80 new, if you can, you know, buy them off of like a who would have these? Maybe Big Bad Toy Store, maybe. Those types of places. Entertainment Earth will probably have a couple in the back. So definitely at the number 2 spot, and these look really good. These look Wild West. I think this is probably what I myself personally, if I was willing to, like, yeah, I got to get a horse for my, this is what we're going to check out. Okay, now before I get to the number 1 spot, we're going to do an honorable mention, because it would be really dumb to talk about articulated action figure horses and not mention Boss Fight Studio and the Mighty Steed line. Now, this is a 1/18th scale line, okay? So I realize it's tainting the results, but that's why it's in the honorable mention and not actually ranked. And I'm not suggesting that you guys go out and buy one of these and use it with your 1/12th scale and say, oh, it's the pony or it's the goblins or the dwarfs, smaller. I'm just mentioning it because it needs to be mentioned. People need to know. This is a learning video. People need to know that Boss Fight Studio has a really cool 1/18th scale line of horses out there. So that's really all this is about. Okay, we are going to go on to the number 1 spot. Okay, so in my number 1 spot for 1/12 fantasy horses that play nice with the Mythic Legions et al., etc., is this Toy Biz Lord of the Rings collection of deluxe horse and rider sets. These are sets of a horse, articulated horse, and a rider for it that come in a box. So that means it's a big thing on a shelf that they can charge a lot of money for, but inside it's just got like a crappy figure, and then the horse is probably pretty cool. And I have one. We're going to check it out here in a minute. We're going to go live in a minute to this horse that we're going to see here. So these are all sets that they came out with, just kind of a money-making scheme where they just come up with a different guy and his horse. So there's one that's like Aragorn and his horse is brown. And there's one of like Legolas and his horse, and it's just the same horse but white. And there's a Ringwraith one, and an Arwen one, and of course there's a Gandalf one. Naturally, I mean, there's probably multiple Gandalf ones. There's probably one with the white horse and Gandalf the Grey, and the white horse and Gandalf the White. They probably just kept shoehorning figures and these horses together over and over again. And that means there's a lot of these out there, and there's a lot of these out there loose, and there's a lot of these out there that nobody knows about, nobody's looking for, and nobody knows that exist. So these are going to be plentiful in the second-hand market. Now, I have one, and we're going to cut to it right now with some Mythic Legions figures next to it, and we're going to talk about it real briefly. So let's go over to the bench, as they call it, and this is the horse I got. Now the deal with how I got this was, it was at my Goodwill, right? But they put it in with the piles of other like kids' toy horses, like My Little Pony or any cheap cheese ball, you know, cheap plastic horse. And this thing was just rolling around loose with it. And it turns out I think it's the Legolas one. But it has a pretty good look to it. And this one actually has a button that does this kind of thing, and that looks pretty wild on the screen. It looks like there's some kind of glitchathon going on. But there's a little bit of movement you can do to this, and of course there's a lot of customization you can do to it as far as the look. All right, here's something interesting though. You'll see that the body is like this color white, and that the head is sort of a yellowish color, and that's because the body is a plastic and the head is rubber, and it's some sort of rubber over like an exoskeleton type thing, so that you can see that you can move the head all around and pose it. It's got like a wire thing, and it's got rubber, but the actual rubber itself has at this point discolored to where it no longer matches the rest of the horse. So if you do find one of these and it is discolored, you might as well go ahead and do some kind of a cool repaint or shade it in, or a blanket thing or something. Go big with it. That's all I'm saying, is embrace the weirdness of the strange color. Now here's a couple of Mythic Legions. I think there's some type of a Legion builder. They're kind of a generic female human knight. And this is them with the horse next to it. Looks pretty good, pretty on scale. You're probably like wondering, well, you know, actually put it on the horse. And so here we have a little horse magic going on for you guys there with the Mythic Legions crew. Anyways, there it is in action. My #1 spot is look for these abandoned Lord of the Rings deluxe horse and rider sets everywhere, all over the planet. You're gonna just find these things. Now that I've mentioned them, you're just gonna find them, and you're gonna go, wow, these are pretty cool. What's up with the weird button? And then you're gonna know true weirdness in action figures. So that's it for today's slight, you know, I want to say intrusion into everyone's lives, but it's something that we all needed to learn. So I'll catch you guys on the next one.